So, hello and welcome to the Digital Health Hackers podcast. I have Ilya Beda with me today. Ilya, you are CTO at Beda Software. So, why don't you tell me a little about yourself?
Yeah, so it's nice to see you today. Yeah, and I would like to send all the warm regards to listeners of postcards of this podcast. Yeah, I'm very happy to be here and share a few words about myself and things we are doing in the Beda software. So for I think last 9 or even 10 years, we have been building various applications on top of FHIR. So we're building only solutions for healthcare. Started as a consultancy company, building some startups. EHR EMR integration and so on. And now we transformed into a vendor who built EMR solution, particularly Beda EMR, that I will share more information today and show how you can build very cool stuff as a native FHIR project. Yeah.
This is really interesting to me. And I actually think a lot of people in the field, at least in the FHIR industry, most of them build integration solutions, right? Like they try to work with something existing and they like fix broken pipes, as I'd like to call it.
Yeah.
What's your story here? Like, how did you? What is the story of Beta Software? How did you then decide that, okay, you know what, we're actually going to build an EMR on top of FHIR?
Yeah, so it's a long story, and yeah, you are totally right about lots of companies using FHIR for building integration for interoperability, because it's like what FHIR was initially designed for, but it doesn't mean that it's the only thing that FHIR is good at. So I think. I started just as a web developer, and I built my company to just build various kind of web application. We built some sites for property management, some promotions, some simple CRMs, and so on. Yeah, and just one day I met a professor from University of Center. No, it was University of San Francisco. Now he's working at the University of Central Florida, and he was building application for some meta-analysis of genomes and diseases and so on. And I just need to build some fancy plots, fancy graphs for this site. It was the first project in the healthcare. I was very interested. Then we with the same doctor, we built application for cancer screening. So you can take a picture of your mole and AI will recognize whether it's melanoma or not. So I was very excited about helping people building stuff for healthcare. And I started dive a bit deeper in this area. And finally, I met Nikolai from Health Samurai, and he helped me a lot by introducing FHIR, provide a lot of guidance like how you can build application, and we implemented a couple of projects together and so on. And since I didn't have any healthcare background that time, it was a completely new world for me. So I need to better understand like how does it work under the hood, what how to proper capture information about like diagnosis, appointment, etc., etc. So I learn it from the FHIR resources. So when I need to, for example, build some scheduling system, I go to the FHIR specification and see how it is implemented there. And I use FHIR as a primary API and primary data model because I know that FHIR provide me much more flexibility and solution will be much more robust and better than if I try to build everything on my own. So FHIR was a kind of guidance for me to understand some particular parts of the healthcare business domain and build like ready-to-use production application.
Excellent. So I think we are seeing a lot of this, even from people listening. They might not be that deep in the healthcare domain, and when they first look at the FHIR resources, they immediately notice that the domain model has already been modeled decently well for them, and it's very attractive to just start using those domain models instead of reinvent them in your database again.
Yeah, for me, it was the most useful thing in FHIR. And only after that, when we start building integration, because, as you mentioned, it's a huge market demand and so on. So we understand this like second part of the FHIR. And now working closely with CSIRO on Spark initiative here in Australia, I understand more understand part about creating implementation guides, profiles for specific country use cases. So it's like in a very straightforward way, like FHIR for me, like evolved from just a data model to integration and to a way to create a kind of documentation and manage the whole software development cycle. So it's very long, very deep level of understanding of FHIR you can get, and it's nice that it provides more and more interesting stuff when you continue working with it. Yeah, but from the very beginning, it's pretty simple. It's just resources. You look at them, you use them as data model, and it's very good entry point.
Starting point, easy to get started, and then you can, again, Spark is literally being done as a FHIR profile today. Although I think the data models are being modeled separately by the clinical, team, and they are passing it on to the FHIR team to like model it. So that's interesting. So Ilya, let's, should we get started with Beda EMR and see what it does? Get our hands dirty.
Yeah. So I will start with some slides. So
All right, I will share your screen. Here you go.
Okay. Yeah. So the history of Beda EMR starts at 16th of December 2021. So by this time, we already had a lot of open source solutions on our GitHub account, because from the first day we didn't want to reinvent the wheel, and we try to contribute as much as we can to our open source portfolio, just to build project faster, more efficient, and so on. And on the December 16th of 2021, it was a hackathon by Health Samurai. So they did a hackathon like each year before the Christmas to build some cool, interesting stuff on top of FHIR. And we decided that maybe it will be fun just to try to build EMR that uses only FHIR API under the hood. Yeah, it was quite successful, and in more than 3 years. So right now you can see like we have more than 1,800 commits with various features, people using our solution, but number of stars could be improved, I think, because project is much better than it has stars here. But anyway, starting from a simple hackathon project, it evolved into a full-featured EMR with a lot of useful functionalities. Right now we have implementations all over the world. I think the largest implementation is in Chile. We are piloting our EMR in universities. And now we are targeting clinical trials, mental health, maternity health, pediatric healthcare, and also working on very interesting project for customers from United States for injury case management. I like this project a lot because it's kind of mix between healthcare and finances, legal stuff. So if if some person gets to motor vehicle incident, to get proper insurance payment, you need to gather a lot of documents, and it's very complex system in an overlap between EMR and CRM, and we are building it on top of our solution. So in Beda EMR, we have, I think, three main principles. The first one is FHIR-native. And the reason I already mentioned before, so FHIR is a good data model. It helps you to properly design your application. By leveraging FHIR, you know that the solution will be scalable. You will not face some issues when you get new requirement from a customer, but your architecture is limited and you can't implement it. Actually, it's otherwise. Usually we understand FHIR resources better during some particular examples. Last time it was related to encounter resource. So as you know, each FHIR resource has lots of fields. And usually when you start using it, use very limited number, like 3-4 fields that just capture like information about patient, so on. Yeah, but when you build something more complex, you understand why all other fields are added. And when you see like how requirement from your customer transforms perfectly maps into existing FHIR data structure, it's very exciting. So FHIR-native is definitely a way. Another thing for Beda EMR, it is to be structured data capture driven. So there is an implementation guide called Structured Data Capture that describes how forms works in FHIR, and I actively participated in this work group, and I am a key contributor of SDC. And I very like this approach because when you build product, when you build all your forms on top of SDC, it makes your product more close to some low-code or even no-code solution, because to implement some workflows, you just need to work with data, with FHIR resources, with mappers, and FHIR questionnaires. But I will demonstrate it later in the demo part. Yeah, and here you can see like a schema. Maybe to make it bigger somehow. So here you can see kind of architecture diagram. So we have our own questionnaire renderer. We have FHIR SDC service implemented in Python. We support multiple data extraction engine. It could be run on top of any FHIR server. Yeah, we have some test scenarios implemented with test script and so on. So basically, this is this SDC-driven architecture allows us to build any kind of sophisticated workflows for healthcare. There is one missing part, I think, here related to FHIR subscription, but it's needed only for advanced things. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and for final principle of Beda EMR is open source. So as I mentioned, it started as an open source hackathon project, and I still want to keep it open source, to keep all the building blocks public and free to use. Some parts of EMR, especially AI related, they're closed source, but common building blocks fully public and could be used by anybody. So yeah, that's the kind of short overview of the EMR. Maybe you have some questions.
Yeah, of course. So I mean, before we, just based on the principles, right? So let's, the first one is again, like being FHIR-native, right? So I think there are instances where it's really exciting to see where a use case fits really well with a FHIR resource, and then everything is good.
Yeah.
In the scenarios where it doesn't fit well, right? Like the data that needs to be mapped somehow doesn't go into FHIR resource properly, then what are your strategies around this?
Yeah, it's a very common and well-known question in FHIR community, how to proceed with data that are not like fully maps into FHIR resources. In for some simple cases, you can just use extensions, but sometimes you need something more. And my answer to this question is to use the thing called custom resources. Custom resources, it is resources that follow all the principles of FHIR resources, but they're not part of the specification. And here, I think it makes sense to revisit one more topic regarding the FHIR server, because this feature of custom resources unfortunately is not widely supported. And if you are building solution for integration, it seems that you don't need this feature at all. But when you build something custom, it's really needed. So as I mentioned before, my first introduction to FHIR was from Nikolai Ryzhikov, CTO of Health Samurai, and it was the first FHIR server that we start to use. It was Aidbox, and Aidbox supports this feature called custom resources. So in project, when we build something between healthcare and other business domain, we can simply extend our data model by introducing this resource, for example, for some notification that stores email templates and so on. And it's definitely not part of the FHIR, but with Aidbox, we can define them to look and feel as FHIR resource and use the same API principles to query this data, create, update, delete, do whatever we want.
Got it. And again, so there are a lot of, there are the whole bunch of FHIR servers available in the market right now. And then there are some FHIR servers which take this concept of a headless EHR really seriously, right? I think Aidbox is definitely one of them. MedPlum is definitely one of them. And there are a few of these that are going hard on FHIR natively for storing everything that your healthcare software might need, right? So definitely Aidbox supporting custom resources, supporting, I think just the expressivity of search that Aidbox supports. I don't think any of the, for example, if we take the cloud FHIR server of Google or Azure, they're still yet to support this level of expressivity, right? So when you say FHIR-native, in this case, it's mostly, so right now you are compatible with Aidbox specifically.
So it depends on what functionality you need from your app. So our primary platform, Aidbox, because it provides very useful authentication and authorization mechanism. It also provides very nice access control, and everything is built in the Aidbox core. So you can very easily leverage it, and you don't need to spend a lot of time to setting up different components to work together. So for example, if you are working with Amazon Health Lake, they just provide you a FHIR server. And I think it will be the most common case. You have only the FHIR API. Then you need to build some authentication and authorization. There are guides, but you're still on your own. It's up to you to build the integration. It's up to you to finally a good OAuth provider. It could be OAuth0, some key clock, whatever, and they are slightly different. So you have a lot of R&D to be done. Yeah, with Aidbox, everything just built in. Another thing that I'm facing a lot when working with different FHIR servers is, and you mentioned it, it is limitation of search. So searching in FHIR, I think it's one of the toughest thing. But even if the whole FHIR search is implemented, sometimes you need something more specific. And with Aidbox, you can extend your search just by writing some parts of SQL query that will be embedded in the kind of main search flow. So, for example, all standard search parameters is already implemented. You create your custom one, and you just create a small where SQL expression that will be embedded. And for example, you do some very sophisticated searches. it is not a blocker for other FHIR servers. Obviously, you can do some workarounds, for example, do some filtration on the front end, querying more resources and so on. But from performance perspective and ability to develop fast and efficient, I think Aidbox it's the like top FHIR server for me.
Yeah, excellent. No, that's definitely good. I mean, I think they're also leading a lot of efforts in the SQL on FHIR area where you can natively query on SQL. So that's completely fine. And, so do you have any plans, for example, to start supporting other FHIR servers beyond Aidbox at any time in the future? Or is it Aidbox native?
So right now, version that we have on the GitHub, it is open source public community version. It could be run on top of any FHIR server. For example, for Australia, we have a reference implementation of Australian FHIR server built on top of Smile. And we have a limited version of our EMR working with this reference implementation. Unfortunately, not all features works, but some basic functionality like dashboard, some questionnaires, some simple management of scheduling, yeah, it works pretty well. Yep.
Got it. Probably
However, for something more production ready, it will require a lot of adjustments on the FHIR server side. So,
Right. I think someone needs to define like a sort of a capability statement that is required for headless FHIR servers, so people like you are able to develop on top of that standard and use that implementation guide as the norm. So that'd be good.
Yeah, so right now we are working on creating implementation guide that will describe what features of FHIR server is needed for Beda EMR to be run on top of it. And maybe if we successfully create this one, the next step will be to create an FHIR test suite to be able to automatically check if this FHIR server could be used with EMR or not, and at least know like which features will not work.
Got it. That's really interesting. Excellent. I mean, I would like to see this progress and the Inferno test suite along with, just the ONC G10 testing criteria. It can also test for a headless EMR that can run something like Beda EMR. So, yes, let's get ready for the demo. Let's dive into it.
Yeah. So, I will... in this demo, I would like to more focus on AI part because I think it's most exciting thing. So I will start by creating a questionnaire for immunization. After that, we will generate a mapper that transforms questionnaire response into immunization resource. I think during this creating this mapper, I will need to do some updates in code because usually AI do not provide ready-to-use mapper, but at least we can measure is it useful or not. And once this questionnaire is created, we can go to the patient profile and create this immunization with AI Scriber. Yeah, so it will be very exciting, I hope. Yeah. So let's start by creating a questionnaire. And
questionnaire to capture immunization information.
Yeah. So here you can describe what kind of questionnaire you want in a free text. Yeah. After that, large language model will do the magic. So talking about, it was fast. Yeah. So you can see that it created 4 questions: type of vaccine, date, dose, lot number, name of clinician. I think it's fine. So we can just save this questionnaire. Like this. Yeah. So now we select the context for this questionnaire where it will be shown in a system. So I would like to be able to create this questionnaire in a patient profile or in a context of encounter. And we change status to draft to see it available in the interface. Okay. Now let's implement extraction for this questionnaire. So this tool called SDC IDE I developed for just presentation. I don't exactly remember. I think it was Dev Days. Yeah, so and you can find on your YouTube video where I describe how SDC works and use this tooling for demonstration purposes, but we ended up that it's very useful and could be and simplify questionnaire development a lot. Yeah. So yeah, let's do something. We can see form. We can type something, for example, COVID immunization. And here you can see how it updates real time. So now I would like to, again, use AI, generate a mapper that converts this questionnaire response into immunization resource. Yeah, again, some large language model magic happens under the hood. And hopefully we will see something meaningful here. Okay, yeah. So now we can talk a bit more about mapping. So for if we stick with SDC specification, you have three options to make a mapping. First one is observation-based, and you just create an observation. Another one is definition-based, where you create any FHIR resource, but the shape of questionnaire should map shape of the FHIR resource you are going to create. And the third one, the most powerful, is FHIR mapping language, when you need to define a mapper with this FHIR mapping language. So I didn't like it a lot. And I still think that it could be done better. So from the very beginning, I switched to some custom mapping logic, and I started with Druid. Druid is open source mapping language developed by Samurai, and it is natively available in Aidbox. So that's why it was the first choose for me. But later on, I decided that I need something more close to FHIR. So I, inspired by XFHIR query, FHIRPath, and so on, I created my own mapping engine and I'm calling it FHIRPath mapping language, because all queries is happen through the FHIRPath expression. So you can see like it is a bundle transaction, and some values is template with FHIRPath that query the questionnaire response. Yeah. So now you can see how model is not hallucinating, but creating some unnecessary information. So in the questionnaire, we have a patient ID that will be used to bind immunization to specific patient, but AI generated for us the whole element in the bundle transaction to create a patient, but we definitely don't need it. So we just remove this one. Okay. I have a network error. So let's try one more time. Usually it happens when there is some syntax error, something like this. When you manually edit factors, it may happen. Okay. Yeah, now it worked. So encounter questionnaire response. Yeah, I think it's hallucinated a lot. Let's try to regenerate.
So in the meanwhile, I'll just explain to people who are watching the questionnaire and the questionnaire response is not really structured resources. So it's not the same as observation or immunization record, and there needs to be a mapping step before we are able to get to that. And I think that's mainly what Ilya is doing here with the mapping language. However, again, there are various approaches to this. Now, this FHIR-path mapping language, is this open source as well?
Yeah, it is open source. It is available on Beda Software GitHub account. And I had a presentation about, I had a speech at FHIR-native last year when I provide more details why I decided to build my own mapping language and so on. So there is implementation in TypeScript, and I think later this month we will implement Python version of it. Yeah, so from the second try, LLM model is much better. It's still a generated patient, but we don't need this section. Encounter also is not needed. It uses some imaginary function to create IDs that we don't need. Yeah, and it failed to get particular IDs from the questionnaire, but it worked well for vaccine code and vaccination date. So if I write example COVID, has COVID here in vaccine type. Yeah, and it messed with, yeah.
Got the link ID wrong. Okay. I think a lot of what happens with LLMs is that we need to have a very strong evaluation set so that we are able to test how well it functions.
Yeah. So it is. I think here it is a very good moment to talk about about undeterministic large language model. So each time you run the model, it provides you different result. Usually during the demo, it's the worst result, but still, you need to be prepared for it. So that's why a lot of people are concerned about using a large language model for some automatic diagnostic and so on, because this kind of things they may be crucial when system is making a decision. So that's why my approach in leveraging AI is to always have a step where human verifies the result. So I can generate questionnaire with AI, but after that I can manually update it in the builder. I can generate mapper with AI. After that, I can manually adjust the mapping. Let's try third time.
I completely agree with that. Having that intermediary artifact, and that artifact actually it's sort of like code, right? Like you don't want AI to directly do something, generate code, and then I can validate it once and then let that code, do the mapping for me. That seems to be a really good approach to it.
Oh, it is much better. You can see it. It like pick up references in the patient, and also it use patient ID and encounter IDs to generate these references. Again, let's clean up patient section and encounter section just to have immunization. Yeah, and you can see like this part is worked. Again, vaccine code also worked, but I think it Since it's not a real code, makes sense to put it in text. It makes much more sense from FHIR perspective. Finally, current date time, vaccination. Let's check why it doesn't vaccination date. It's another thing that is not needed. So you can see there are some small things that should be fixed, but yeah, it worked. Okay, let's choose those and the lot number. Lot number worked just fine. For oh, and two other fields are not extracted. Anyway, it's fine. So I think I'm comfortable with this result. We can check if this mapper works. Vaccine code. Yeah, it was my mistake. Okay, it works now. Yeah. So now we have generated questionnaire, generated extraction to immunization. And now let's try to fill this questionnaire. Just create a new patient. Like this. And talking about FHIR questionnaires, this form is actually FHIR questionnaire. So if you would like to use EMR in other countries, not in the US, you don't need SSN, you need some adjustment to phone number. You just go, you update your questionnaire, and that's how you can customize. When I save this questionnaire, extraction happened, and new patient resource is created.
Interesting.
Okay.
Interesting.
Now,
So just a quick question again, like, so all forms that we are seeing are based on FHIR questionnaires.
Yeah.
Got it. And so in the background, you convert it to a sort of like is that a transaction bundle that you then actually post to the FHIR server once a questionnaire is submitted?
Yeah. So each form represented as FHIR questionnaire. Now on your screen, you can see patient create form that I just used. And this questionnaire response converts to transaction bundle that create resources on FHIR server. For this particular case, it's just a patient resource. But for more sophisticated cases, you can do a lot of simultaneous create, update. So for example, you fulfill a lab result, so you change status of diagnostic report and also create an observation in one bundle transaction. So it's consistent, and all the structured data is up to date in your system. But the interface to manipulate it is just a FHIR questionnaire.
Makes sense. Makes sense. I mean, that way you customize it to different FHIR profiles, even if you want to, just by changing the mapping.
Yeah. So by specifying mapping, you change any behavior. You can support various profiles. You can support whatever you want. Again, creating this counter also is FHIR questionnaire. Everything's FHIR questionnaire here. Yeah. We created this new encounter. And for encounter, we can record a conversation between patient and practitioner. And for this purpose, I will just record, for example, this immunization happened, and we record the result. Okay, yeah. So now we started the recording, and I will just have a quick look on this form. So we injected you a vaccine against COVID. So it happened today, the 12th of February 2025. It was just one dose of vaccine. The lot number is ABC321, and the vaccine was administered by Dr. Smith. Yeah. So lots of modern EMRs, they provide scriber functionality. So it is not something new that we can just record conversation and recognize it into text. Again, as I mentioned, I prefer to provide control for a human being. So if you would like to adjust something in this conversation, if something was captured wrong, you can change it. If not, we can just save it. Yeah, and as a final step from this conversation between doctor and patient, we would like to create something more structured. So let's choose our immunization questionnaire. It should be somewhere here. Yeah, this one. So since it, yeah, by the way, it is a public demo available for anybody in the internet, so you can test it. That's why I have lots of questionnaires here, and I'm still wondering who created this one. Yeah, because I didn't have any calls with clients from Korea, but somebody is definitely testing it, and anybody is free to test it, to test this AI flows. Yeah. Okay, I choose the questionnaire, and now I press extract. So again, large language model, it will take this conversation and try to fill the questionnaire with an answers. Let's see how many answers it pick up. I think it pick up almost all of them. Yeah, so it's captured COVID, date of vaccination, doses, vaccine lot number. So yeah, on the overview, you can see that there is no information about immunization. Once we complete this document, maybe yeah, one more time, document is created, but it is in the, sorry, it is in counter. Yeah, document is created, but it is in progress status. So it's not a medical information yet. It's just a draft of the questionnaire. I can review it. I can complete this questionnaire. Once it is completed, we get one more error. Status is required. I'm not sure why it didn't fire it here and which status it is talking about. Let's do some debugging. Now you can see how extractions happened, and we can go and see counter status. But it is not creating an encounter. Maybe I didn't save it. Okay. Let's try one more time.
Nice to see that it gets saved and there is no loss in progress, but okay. Status.
Yeah, it seems that it tries to create an encounter, and it was encounter in the originally in this mapping, but I deleted it. Yeah, for some reason it wasn't.
But regardless, I mean, I think this is really cool in terms of the workflow that it can offer practitioners, right? Like they choose their own structured data forms and they interact in natural language and they decide what gets extracted, and they validate it before again committing it back to the EHR.
Yeah. So it's definitely an interactive process. So sometimes it may not work properly, but you have everything under your control, and now I try to fix it. Okay. Yeah, it is our mapper. We just need to copy ID of this mapper. Yeah, it is our questionnaire, and you can see that. Yeah, you can see like there is a bug in the IDE, so I have 3 mappers.
Right,
Try
there are
to
multiple.
execute them one by one. We don't need this two. Yeah. Okay. Open it. Yeah, now we go to save. In the previous step, we need to go through amend flow. It's saved. There is no error. And we can see here on the dashboard that we have COVID immunization for this one.
Excellent,
Yeah.
excellent. So here, what are you doing for the dashboard widgets that we are seeing? How are they, how is it being queried? Is it on top of the questionnaire response, or is it on top of the FHIR resource?
No, these ones, they are querying FHIR resources. So if we go to network, you can see like a query immunization resource, and here this created from the questionnaire, from the mapper that we were struggling debugging.
Got it, got it. And this is also all customizable, and they can define different widgets here on the dashboard.
Yeah. So dashboard is very simple. It doesn't make any sense to any practitioner. So it definitely should be improved. But the main idea for this dashboard is just to demonstrate what functionality we have. And for particular project, we build this, we customize this dashboard to display more meaningful information. So it's more like a demo. Some resources, integration with Apple Health Kit when we pick up information about goals and display them on the dashboard. Another example is, maybe let's fill it with something, how we can display some visual information on the dashboard, like plots and so on. Yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense from the clinical point of view, but it's nice for demos. And when we build a production project, obviously this functionality make designed for particular clinical workflows.
Got it. So, so again, when you are going to a real clinic and when you're implementing something, right? So do you do that as a SMART-on-FHIR app? Do you do that separately, or do you just, do you use Beda EMR out there in the wild for any of these specialities right now?
I think we can call Beda EMR a SMART-on-FHIR application because it leverages Smart Launch and OAuth 2 for getting token from the FHIR server. So it could be embedded into any other EMR as SMART-on-FHIR application. So it would be possible to run EMR on top of Epic, but since the API is very limited, it mostly will be some dashboard that will work to display all the data, and that's all, because we can try it back. Yeah. Also, talking about smart apps, when we run EMR on top of FHIR server that supports smart launch and all those features, we can run any smart applications. I think I need to change role. So yeah, it's funny. I have annotate button of Zoom that overlap with this button, so I can click on it. Yeah. This interface is interface for administrator. That's why I can update questionnaires, do this technical stuff. This interface is doctor interface. And when we open smart apps from a doctor perspective, we have much more options here. Most of them was added during various Australian connectathon. So we have integration with smart app from CSIRA. It is smart forms. It's basically another implementation of SDC, but they provide a lot of useful questionnaires for local Australian usage. I think the most sophisticated one is, I don't see it here. It's about native Australian healthcare checkup, something like this. Yeah. Another smart app is cardiovascular calculator, and you can see it like proceed with the full smart launch process on the Aidbox. We can launch any smart app. And we have some bug here. Okay, maybe next time. Since it was added.
This is a smart app launching other smart apps, in a sense.
Yeah. So smart app that loads information about smart apps and use FHIR server to launch them. I think this, from my point of view, it is kind of future of any EMR to integrate smart apps in any part of the interface, because it's the only way to natively extend it. Because here, what you can see, it's a very like simple and maybe like naive example. Because it's I'm not expert. I'm not a doctor. I'm building system from the software development perspective. So it's more like a framework that built on top of FHIR that works very well for some clinical workflows. But for example, if we are talking with clinicians who are working in oncology or maybe in some other specific areas, they need very specific interfaces. And when you build EMR, you have two options. The first option, you have to build it on your own and put a lot of time and money in it. And other option, you can reuse this module from somebody else. For example, there is a company that built very nice interface for oncologist. And if I can just embed it in my EMR as a smart app, it's a win-win situation. So in my product, I get this tailored experience, and the other company is focused only on building this module for oncology. They don't need to build the whole EMR stuff around it. But the current, I think, direction for all EMRs vendors is try to build everything on their own to
work. Yeah, everything works bad. So that's what most people are doing.
Yeah.
I feel there is like two different ways to this problem, right? Like one is you have metadata driven or artifact driven functionality. So for example, in your case, a questionnaire, a mapping, and all of these are things that you can define within the EHR, and then it's able to drastically change how the EHR behaves, right? Like even the widgets, these are all like artifact driven functionality, and you should be able to kind of give someone a package for oncology, and they should just be able to like download that, and within Beda EMR it just works for oncology. The other option is like they want to break out of it, and then they actually have a smart app that does everything. So I think, like today we are still starting with this kind of an idea, and we are just like we are taking small steps to get to this idea of like a separate the data from the application, like have different data platforms that you can actually build on top of. And I think Beda EMR is definitely a step in that direction, right? Like, so you're able to run this on top of a headless FHIR server like Aidbox. And so tell me, like, what has your experience been when you are actually working with hospitals? So for example, let's say they have other functionality that they need as well, right? Like, for example, billing, invoicing, and managing stocks, managing inventory, and so on. How have you handled these things?
So for some for pediatric solution I mentioned before, we implemented workflow for vaccine management, so we can track when vaccine arrived. We tracked medication in a batch, when vaccine is administered, we decrease like number of available vaccines and so on. And all this stuff is implemented just on top of FHIR, and it works pretty well with like charge item definition, and other resources for financial part. So for inventory management, I think FHIR works pretty well, and with all techniques and approach I demonstrated, you can build it on top of our solution. Billing is much more complex. We in projects that I again mentioned before about injury management system, we implemented CMS 1500 form. It's kind of base form for insurance in US. So again, we implement some simple functionality just fulfill needs for this particular client. But medical billing is a complex thing, and for hospitals, for like organizations that need more like more sophisticated functionality, we just use third-party module. No, not really third-party, because it's part of Aidbox. Aidbox provides useful billing module, and we just use it for any sophisticated cases. Yeah.
Got it. So again, this brings the challenge of integrations, right? Like, so let's say there are a lot of integrations a hospital system needs to have in order to function in a real world setting.
Like labs, VHL7, V2, this kind of integration. Yeah. Again, Aidbox provides a very useful mechanism for working with HL7 V2, and we can set up this pipeline. When from labs we get HL7 V2 message, then it transforms into FHIR observation. Once we get FHIR observation, we have it in the interface. Yeah.
Got it.
So, yeah, so it's integration is a pain point for any healthcare. Yeah, but but still, any company there try to follow standards. In some cases, you can get you can get FHIR resources from a lab with just a valid FHIR observation resource, and you don't need to convert it somehow. You just save it, mark it as external resource in your system, and work with it. So yeah, it's totally possible nowadays to build this integration. And we discussed in the very beginning, there are lots of companies who are working on building this integration from FHIR to any other format, and FHIR to HL7 V2 back and forth. Again, it's well-known task that lots of companies working on, so it's pretty easily. You can find someone who can build it. You can use some third-party platform like Rhapsody or something like this to build this integration. And once you get everything in FHIR, you just use Beda EMR.
No, that's really nice. So, I mean, that's kind of been my dream as well. That we are able to build for healthcare once, we're able to reuse across multiple sites, right? But then this, in a sense, it's always been elusive because of the data model, right? Like different people have different data models in their own proprietary systems. So it's hard to kind of build an app that works across these different data models because they are all like so totally different. And with FHIR, it sort of definitely brings the complexity down because there are now only so many different data models you have to deal with. But again, at the same time, with great power, you give the user a greater degree of flexibility with regards to what they're able to do, right? So how do you how do you manage this complexity? So let me give you a practical example, right? So let's say we want to build an immunization registry or an immunization app that kind of synchronizes different sites and then gets the immunization details from multiple different sites, and then like it synchronizes it to a central repository, right? Now, authentication on FHIR is not going to be an issue. Like you have Smart, you just install it as a Smart app, all that is fine. But because of the fact that this data was actually captured through a questionnaire response, and that questionnaire response was then mapped by that particular organization or that particular institute into a FHIR immunization response that it's their representation of a immunization resource, right? And then how do you see this working with multiple, you have one data model now in Aidbox and Beda EMR, but then different applications and different integrations and use cases might require a slightly different implementation guide maybe, or a slightly different FHIR profile, like, or even let's take like the Australian core data set, right? That version of the immunization profile will be different, right? So what's your take here?
So first of all, they may be slightly different, but the whole idea behind creating these profiles like AU core is to exactly eliminate this issue. So in AU, I'm not sure if we have a profile for immunization already.
I don't know.
But I think it's not a top priority right now, but I need to check spec. So anyway, the idea is that once we release profile for immunization in AU core, like all Australian companies will need to support it, and basically it's defined restriction for all of them. In this case, Beda EMR version of Beda EMR that we are piloting here in Australia will be modified. We will adjust our mappers to make the targeted immunization resource compliant with AU immunization. And all other vendors will do the same, and the magic of interoperability will happen, and we can exchange the same data. Yeah.
Got it. So this will happen.
In theory, it is like this. In real world, it will be a bit more clunky, but let's hope for the best.
It's definitely, we gotta put the complexity somewhere, right? So, but in this case, that customization would go in sort of the mapper between the questionnaire response and the resource.
Yeah.
Got it. So
it's the only thing that should be changed. It is another good thing about scalability and applying changes. So since we have this intermediate layer as a mapper between user interface that represents as questionnaire and targeted FHIR resource, we can keep the user interface but slightly change mapper to target specific profiles like immunization for US core, immunization for EU core. Maybe last week I was in Philippines, and they will have maybe their own slightly different profile for immunization, and I just need to update mapper to slightly change what fields of the resource in use, maybe add some custom extension country specific, and that's all. But all of them may use on the same user interface, and driven about more sophisticated thing, you always can choose mapper. You can choose one or another, yeah.
Got it. No, that brings me
I
to...
think it's flexible.
It is. And that brings me to another interesting application or like use case of this, right? Like, can you have multiple FHIR profiles within the same server? Or can you have multiple versions of FHIR even? Like, for example, the immunization questionnaire response is entered only once by the user, but then you're able to map this to multiple simultaneous implementation guides and FHIR versions so that each different integration and app can kind of use the version that they want. Is that something that's not sure if it's possible today, but what do you think?
I don't think that it makes sense to have different FHIR version on the same server. Usually it's just one-time migration, and you just take all your resources. For example, now we are mostly on R4B, and I don't think we're going to migrate to R5. I think it will be migration to R6 when it will be released. So it will be like one-time operation. If somebody really need to do this update, we'll just have to reconvert all the resources, and it will be a good issue to resolve in the future. Yeah. Talking about multiple profiles for the same version of FHIR, as you know, you can specify many profiles in the profile section of resource meta, and then you just need to make sure that all profiles in this list do not contradict each other. If they are not, your resource may be compliant with multiple profiles. For example, in Spark, right now we are working on IPS, but it's not like, it's more like Australian specific. It's called AUPS, and profiles for AUPS, they should be compliant to both IPS and AU core. And likely there is no contradiction against these two, so yeah, we just specify both profiles and it works.
Got it. I mean, if there is no contradiction, then it's an easy thing. We can just make a superset resource and then like include both the profiles.
Yeah.
But it's when they contradict that's the main. And again, I'm seeing this a lot with app evolution, right? Like, so for example, let's say that a hospital installs an oncology app that is built on FHIR R4, right? And tomorrow, the Australian Spark project says that everybody needs to move to R6, and everyone moves to R6. But then we don't want to break functionality in the user space, right? So the user, we still kind of want them to continue using the R4 version of the app. And I don't know, like in the US, there are still a lot of DSTU Smart-on-FHIR apps. There are DSTU, STU3 Smart-on-FHIR apps. So at least my vision or take here is that as an EMR or as something, we want to have like our own internal version of what we call our data model, and then we're able to support multiple FHIR versions so that we don't break this user space functionality, right? Like, and then we are able to support different apps and different integrations with time. So what would, in your scenario, so for example, let's say you move from R4B to R6, would that mean that the oncology app, which was previously on R4, kind of needs to be discontinued or either be updated to R6? What would the solution be?
So I prefer to have it upgraded from R4B to R6. Yeah, but if for some reason it is not possible, you still can build a kind of facade, so FHIR facade over FHIR server.
No, that's what
Hopefully we will never be there,
I'm actually seeing that happening, right?
it
Like
will happen eventually.
a lot of people are
Yeah.
doing that. Like they're actually, because even if you build on top of a FHIR server natively and you have your own version of FHIR, you still end up building a FHIR facade on a FHIR server because of different implementation guides and different versions of FHIR that you need to support.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm not sure what
Yeah, but
Aidbox's stance on this is, and do they have features around this? Probably not. But yeah.
so since the Aidbox metadata driven, I think theoretically it could be possible to support multiple versions of FHIR. Yeah. Also, I think if this kind of FHIR facade or FHIR have to be implemented, it's anyway it is much easier than build FHIR facade on top of non-FHIR compliant platform, because if you, for example, update from R4 to R6, there is a straightforward way. There are some mappers. It is resolved by community, so we know how to do this transformation. So we just leverage it and on fly transform R4 to R6. It will be slightly different with maybe search parameters to support all new search parameters from R6 in R4. But again, anyway, it's much easier than when you try to build some facade on top of non-FHIR. Yeah.
Right, because
sometimes it may not be even not possible. Yeah.
Right, because they don't, we don't know the data model that well, and they are also just complete non-compliance to any standard. So no, I get that. So definitely FHIR to FHIR transformation in a sense is easier because of more community support and declarative mapping that we can put, and these engines that we can build on top. That's slightly easier than writing custom code. Yep.
Yeah.
Excellent, Ilya. So this has been a great, session with, an excellent demo and explanation. Anything else that you want to tell our audience?
Please give a star to Beda EMR on GitHub.
Okay, I'll definitely put a link, down below. And again, Ilya, it's with a lot of healthcare open source projects, right? The stars that we get are not really fair because there aren't that many health tech developers who care enough to, go and star it. Once I just made some random, AI library, I put it on GitHub. That got 100 stars in over a month. And then we have like a UI library for, just healthcare structured data capture called MedBlocks UI. That is still getting a few number of stars. So it's, I totally get your frustration. So
I in early time I worked with programming language called Erlang. It was initially designed for some telecom solutions, and it's very interesting programming language, very niche. And if you have open source repository on Erlang in GitHub with, I don't know, 100 stars, you're absolute top superstar. Because the community is not so big.
Erlang, right? Yeah, I think RabbitMQ is written in Erlang. Is that the same?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's like one of those top tier S tier languages, which is excellent concurrency. You're able to scale up to different nodes. It's insane. Yeah, it's a so yes,
it's completely shifts your mind how you think about concurrent programming, because usually you can't create process for each new connection. You need to use thread pools and so on. It's books this big describing how to do it properly. And guys, in Erlang, we are using virtual machine. You can create new process for each connection. It's our goal in our virtual machine to do it possible.
Yeah, no, I mean that was the first time I just noticed that you can just take two bare metal VMs, run Erlang on it, and connect from VM A to VM B, and just distributed computing works. There is no Kubernetes, there is nothing. That was like, what?
Yeah.
But then it's not appreciated enough, right? Like, still, most people use Python, JavaScript, or something. So I think how good something is and how popular it is are not that related.
Yeah. But you mentioned RabbitMQ is very popular project. So it's used in I don't know, in lots and lots of projects. Yeah, and you don't need to know that it's implemented in Erlang. You just use it and don't care. I don't exactly remember. There is another quite popular project that's implemented in Haskell. And you don't know that you use Haskell in production, but I don't remember the project name. But
I've always
it's
thought Haskell is
something about generate GraphQL API for your database schema, something like this. So it's pretty like useful and straightforward. Yeah.
Yeah. Is it Hasura?
Something like
Hasura or something like that? No.
Yeah.
No way.
This one.
Hasura is written in. I had no idea Hasura was written in Haskell. In fact, we use it in production.
Yeah.
We have no idea that it's written. So there you go. So I mean, Hasura might have thousands of stars, but Haskell probably will have lesser.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully, again, you can go and, check out Beda EMR down in the link below. But maybe something someone else builds on top of Beda EMR and all your tools might get a lot more stars than the foundational tools itself.
It would be fun.
Excellent. Thank you. And this is Ilya Beda again, and I will also, leave a link to your profile down below. So thanks a lot for the time and showing an excellent demo. Very cool, approach to take and very cool direction to be traveling in. So once again, thank you for doing this episode with me.
You're welcome. Thank you very much for inviting me, and happy to visit your podcast one more time. Maybe talk about some Python open source I'm also working on.
Of course, yes. The Python FHIR SDK is also Ilya's brainchild. So, I think we should definitely do another episode covering that in more depth.
Yeah.
I think you're doing wonderful work. So, thank you. Thank you again.